Jason, how do you feel about fairy tales?
I like fairy tales.
Yeah?
They're pretty cool.
Yeah?
I like the Grimm's ones. They're usually
There's some dark fairy tales.
they're usually very dark.
Somebody's gonna get their head chopped off, or they're
Yes.
bleeding for eternity, or
There's
whatever.
a monster.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I feel like we've been seeing more and more fairy tales start to come up in video games. Stuff like Puppeteer and stuff like Brothers last year and things
Sure.
like that. And I'm not sure I'm totally on board with it, but
What?
I don't know. But the latest of these is Child of Light, which came out a couple weeks ago as of the time this review goes up.
Hey,
Yeah.
say it in rhyme.
What?
The
no.
rest of the review.
Fuck you.
Say it in rhyme.
No.
Do it.
I'll give you a haiku at the very end. How about
Okay.
that?
Okay,
the
good.
very end of the review, we'll end with a haiku.
Come on, iambic pentameter, just for a little bit.
Jesus Christ, no. We're going to get to that. But let's start at the beginning. Is Child of Light is the... In this game, I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. Like, there was a trailer for it, and I hadn't heard about it. And
Yeah.
I saw it at E3, and everyone was just like, what? I want to play that so bad. And then it was out, which I think is a great way to do video game stuff instead of having a trailer that gets everybody super excited and then being like, coming in 2029.
Yes, exactly.
But this game is a very this is the latest one by, what do they call it, like the UbiArt framework,
Okay.
what they use for Rayman and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So that really super high resolution, nice like hand painted look, 2D animation type of thing. But this is an RPG rather than a platformer, and it's the story of Aurora, a little girl in Austria in 1895 who gets sick and dies or falls asleep or something, and then she wakes up.
She dies, or it was a nap.
Well, in the beginning, they say that she dies, but I kind of kept expecting her to wake up. I was like, you're not going to start your game by murdering a kid, are you? Like, Skyrim won't let you kill kids.
Yeah.
And Child of Light is going to start off with being like, that kid's toast.
Yes.
But this kid wakes up in Lemuria, this crazy land, and that's been kind of enslaved by this dark witch, like you do in fairy tales.
Yeah, which...
And so she has to kind of go on an adventure and find some friends and learn what's going on in this land, and she's trying to get back home. But that's the basic framework. And so what you have here is about an 8 to 10 hour kind of RPG where it's a side-scrolling game where you come in and it's got this very, very beautiful hand-painted art, or at least it looks hand-painted art, where you're wandering around this world. The only thing that kind of busts it just a little bit, and I don't know if other people realize this, but I do, is that all the animation is what they call cutout style. So it's very much just kind of like moving stuff. It's kind of like a motion comic,
Sure.
or whatever. It's kind of primitive.
It's like an anime where they cheat and they'll have a still frame and then just pan across it.
No, it's more like you never see the characters change. Like you're always looking at them from like the same angle, right? So you're looking at them in the battle screen from like a side view, and they move, right? They have an idle animation, they do attack animations and stuff, but they don't turn as much because that's hard to do. It's easy to take an arm and that's hooked up into a few different pieces and move it up and down. It's a lot harder to have somebody make a gesture that changes camera angle because you then have to animate more frames.
Right.
But the basic breakdown here is that the whole thing is like a side scroller where you're moving left and right. And very early on, you get the power of flight, so that's pretty cool. So you get to go all the way up in the air and then down to the ground. But then whenever you run into an enemy, enemies are walking around on the map, and whenever you run into them, then it kind of cuts into like a Final Fantasy style, like your guys on one side, their guys on the other side, like turn-based battle system. And at first, when I saw that battle system, it seemed really kind of primitive. But you comes to find out that it's actually got a fair amount of depth to it, because you got the people's character portraits down at the very bottom of the screen, and they run along this line, and when they hit this red chunk at the end of the line, then you can do an action. You can like attack somebody or whatever, right? But if your character manages to hit one of the enemy characters while they're winding up for their attack, it'll interrupt them and set them back on the timeline. And all that would be kind of a worthless mechanic, except that you also have this little flame guy, Ignatius or whatever, that you can put on top of one of the enemies that's on the screen, and you hit the button, and it'll slow them down. So you can actually have strategy where you're waiting for somebody to get up to that red action point, and then you hit them with the slowdown so that you can beat them to the end and hit them and set them back. So with enough, like, specking your party out the right way, you can actually keep characters juggled back on this timeline over and over again, so they never really get a chance to act if you use the right abilities at the right time.
Yeah.
And at first, it's very much, it just starts out like your character, you have one character, you have Aurora, she's got an attack. But as the game goes on, you get a whole bunch of different interesting characters along the way. You get this this juggler, harlequin performer woman who's good at...
Always good in combat, jugglers.
Absolutely. You get this gnomish kind of guy. There's a mouse with a bow and arrow. There's all these crazy...
Oh, God.
It's kind of like going to Narnia, you know?
Yeah.
There's not a lion, but, you know, I couldn't see any direct Jesus metaphors in there, but then I'm not always looking for that, so maybe it was there and I just didn't get it.
It's always there. Every video game.
Every video game is actually about Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
All of them?
All of them. There's
Bulletstorm
subtext in there.
Bulletstorm is obviously
Clearly, Gray is the Christ child.
a parable of...
You don't remember about the cyborg sushi dick in
Well,
the
you
book
get
of
to the end.
Leviticus?
You get to the end of Bulletstorm, and it's like written by C.S. Lewis or adapted from a C.S. Lewis story.
Adapted from the book of Matthew.
Anyway, back to Child of Light. So the combat in this game is cool, and it's interesting too because each one of your characters, as you level up, they have a tree, right, that has different abilities that goes off in 3 different directions, so you can spec towards one of those first or one of the other ones. And you level up like fucking crazy in this game. Like almost every single battle I ever did in the game, somebody was leveling up at least once.
Constant rewards.
Yes.
That's cool.
And all of the little the level ups that you get, I mean, you're like working towards like level 2 of a power, but it always felt like your characters were progressing, getting more powerful.
Right.
And at first you would maybe be tempted to, like in a game, a lot of RPGs fall into this trap where like in Final Fantasy X, they give you the sphere grid, right? And that's how you level up. But everybody's got access to the same sphere grid, so they're able to move around. So by the end of the game, your characters can feel kind of samey because they're getting all of the same powers.
Yeah.
Here, your characters are all very, very specific. Like, there's one character that is just a tank that has like a defensive buff and then like a taunt. There's some characters that deal specifically in like time magic. There's some characters that deal very specifically in like elemental magic because they've got that whole system of fire and water and lightning.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't cost anything. Like whenever your character comes up to in the road to be the person to attack next, you can instantly switch it out with a different character, which is nice because you have 2 slots, so you can constantly be juggling characters in and out for whatever battle you're doing.
Okay.
Now there are a couple of downsides to this. One is that the enemies that you're fighting don't have health bars, so and there's no real way to see how hurt they are, except like when they get really hurt, they'll kind of slump over in their animation. So when you've got 3 different enemies in an RPG, a lot of times it's really nice to pick like, okay, which one of these has the least hit points?
Yeah, let's go ahead and pick them off.
Let's kill them off first, so I don't have to deal with them. You can't really do that here.
That's weird.
There's also another thing where they have this whole system of fire, ice, and lightning, and they also have dark and light in the game that are opposed to each other. And the enemies, once again, because you don't really have very much information with them, like when a spider comes up and that spider is on fire,
yeah,
you can be reasonably assured that you're going to hit it with water, right? This is going to do something.
It's kind of a big jump, Jeff.
I know. I'm jumping. I'm making an ass out of you and me at this point. But then there are some characters where it's very difficult to tell exactly what you're supposed to hit them with. So what you'll do is you'll end up wasting a lot of time, and of going through different elemental attacks to see which one actually hits hard. And then there are so many different characters or so many different enemy types that show up all the time, which is a good thing. I mean, I like diversity in my enemies, right? Yeah. But it's hard to remember because it's not like all spiders you hit them with fire.
Right.
It's like there's a fire spider, but then here's a forest spider. And it would have been nice if they had something in there to let you kind of get more information about the enemies. I don't feel like it would have really dragged the game down because, like a lot of RPGs, when you start getting into like the back half of this game, the amount of combat that occurs starts to get a little bit tedious.
Oh, really?
Where I wish that I could have just set some either auto tactics, or if I had that information, it would have helped the battles go a lot faster because the battles are very active. You know, you're controlling your 2 characters, and then you've got this little wisp that you move around the screen. And then on each battlefield, they've got these little bushes that give you back a little bit of health and mana. which is nice because it means that you don't have to ration it as much as you do in, like, say, a Final Fantasy game. But it just means that there's a lot going on in every battle.
Right.
And after a while, it started to get a little bit tedious because even though my characters were more powerful, the enemies had been scaled properly, and so it was just the same kind of challenge of battle over and over and over again. That's all broken up by the fact that in between battle, you can go and there's all kinds of there's a handful of optional subquests that you get where you can go back to the map in different places and do stuff to get rewards from people. There's also like just a shit ton of chests and little gems that you open to get potions and stuff like that.
So if you're going to be thorough, this could last much longer than 8 to 10 hours.
Well, when I got through, I had finished all of the subquests. There was only one thing that I hadn't done, which was there are these little poems that you get that are floating around in the world that you have to find, and I only found about half of those. And strangely enough, just as a quick footnote, there's actually a Uplay thing in this game, because it's a Ubisoft game, where you can take your Uplay points and buy the ability to see how many of those things are in each area and how many you've already gotten and how many are left.
Okay.
Which was really strange to me, because usually it's just costumes or some bullshit or whatever, and this was like, unlock a thing that probably should have been unlocked by default by doing stuff. I don't know.
No, seriously, please use Uplay.
Yeah, Uplay. Anyway, this is also the whole combat system is also bolstered by the fact that your characters, they don't have any kind of like specific equipment, right? They have what are called oculi, where you get these crystals that come in like 4 or 5 different varieties that you can slot into an attack, defensive, and support role. And it'll be like, here's a yellow crystal is a lightning crystal. If you put it on your attack, you get lightning attacks. You put it on defense, you're defending against lightning. If you put it in your third one, you'll get something like +2 to magic or something. But then you can take these, and they come in varieties. You can take like 3 of the small yellow ones and make a bigger one. And those 3 bigger ones make a bigger one and a bigger one. So you're crafting, very simple crafting system to create bigger and bigger gems that you slot into your entire party. It's fine. It feels a little weird in that, like, because the way you're bolstering your attack is just with elemental damage. If you have like a character that has fire on their primary attack, and then you wander into an area where most of the enemies are fire, that character kind of becomes
worthless,
useless. Yeah.
He becomes a healer,
right? Exactly. Well, they don't actually do that, but you do shit all damage.
Yeah.
So it was nice. I probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more going on there. They also give you it's so many potions. It's not even funny. Like, here's potions to speed you up. Here's potions to make your attack uninterruptible. Here's potions to refill your health, refill your mana, refill all this stuff. I don't know if I am just a badass, but like I went through the game and used like 3 the entire time. I mean, and most of them were on boss battles. So the combat system is good. It's got a few bumps and flaws, but at 10 hours, like if this was 40 hours, that system really would have needed to have evolved more to not just become completely worthless.
Right.
But at 10 hours, it overstayed its welcome a little bit, but not a huge amount. I'll tell you, though, what did overstay its welcome a huge amount. Rhyming. Now, this is going to be totally just like one man's opinion, right?
Yes.
This, you can't objectively tell people, like, if you like rhyming and I don't like rhyming, you're never going to convince me the other way, and I'm never going to convince you the other way. But every single line of dialogue in this game is a rhyme in iambic pentameter. And
that's got to become maddening.
I'll tell you, this is going to seem like a real nitpick, right? But just stick with me, because this is, I don't know if I would have minded it as much, but what they do is your character comes up like traditional JRPG style, where you've got your character and the other character, right? When they're talking, they bring up one line of dialogue, and then you hit a button to go to the next line of dialogue, and a button to go to the next line of dialogue. Now, personally, I feel that when you're reading poetry, you're not stopping after every line. You're reading, right? So if they would have brought that dialogue up in one big chunk, right, so that I could have gone, blah, 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 tree, blah, 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 me, blah, 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 blah. Like, if I could have just read it uninterrupted, just boom, 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 I feel like it would have worked a lot better than by having, because, you know, they would highlight the character that was talking, and they would kind of have him moving a little bit. And I felt like it would have been better if they just would have presented the entire exchange to me,
Sure,
one stanza at a time, because then I could have just read it and gone to the next one and read.
So
that.
it wasn't all voice read. It was all just text?
There's a voiced intro and a voiced outro, but
Okay.
all in the game is all just straight text dialogue.
Well, thank God for small favors.
Well, actually, you know what? This is another thing where I feel like it would have been advantageous to have somebody reading that dialogue, because then you would have heard the kind of lyrical quality of it when it was going.
Dr. Dre.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get Snoop Dogg off Call of Duty and get him in Child of Light.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Ignatius or whatever the little flame poop's name is, he could have totally been Snoop Dogg. It would have been awesome.
Yo, man, I want to slow this motherfucker down for you.
They do have a few nice things as the game goes on, where they do a couple of little twists. As it's a fairy tale, the story is pretty simple, and you can kind of see what's coming a mile away.
Sure.
Not exactly a lot of huge things, but it's pretty heartwarming. The characters are likable enough. Like the jester that I was mentioning before, she can't talk in rhyme. Mm-hmm. So what'll happen is that she'll say the first, so the first and third line of dialogue, or the second line of dialogue, and then the fourth line, and she'll say it, and she'll say the wrong end word, and then one of the other characters will correct her to make it rhyme. It's charming. There's a whole sub-story about how the mouse archer, is trying to woo his mousy love. Like, it's a very traditional RPG style, and it's refreshing to be able to play something that's kind of got that simple, heartwarming, just kind of fun, like, storytelling structure that's not 60 goddamn hours long, where you just begin, middle, end. It's a downloadable title. It's like $15, I think, and it's totally worth that. Or it might be 20. I can't remember exactly which one it was. But I felt like I totally got my money's worth. I will say very briefly that I was playing it on the PC, and I started playing with the controller. With the controller, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the overworld where you're using your little flame buddy as a mouse cursor. So you'll like mouse over a bush, and these things will come out. And then if you go over them in the right order with him, it makes a little power up that you're able to pick up. I still find moving a virtual mouse with the game controller incredibly clumsy. Like halfway through this, or a quarter of the way through the game, I switched over to using a mouse and a keyboard. And on the PC, you just use the mouse like a mouse.
Yeah.
Right? So much better, like way more enjoyable, because you've got the fine control of having a mouse instead of trying to do it with the gamepad, which I just find to be really clumsy. Outside of that, I mean, I can say that there's a new game plus. I don't really know that has a lot of value in this. Like, I'll tell you that at a certain point in the game, they open your skill trees up a little bit more, to the point where you can't max them out on a single playthrough without grinding.
Okay, yeah.
Or going through a second time. I don't know, once I got to the end, if I really had any interest in going back a second time going through. Like, there were those pages that had these little stories on them. They were okay. I didn't really feel a need to pick them up. I mean, I wasn't probably quite as deep into the world.
Audio logs.
Exactly. It would have been nice to have a little bit more voice in this game.
Yeah.
The soundtrack, on the other hand, fucking fantastic. Like
classical, or
very classical. The battle theme was real nice. The overworld themes were very nice. Very creative in a lot of different ways. There's a few levels that do some really interesting stuff. There's some turns in the story that are very nice. It's not bad shit happens. It's one of those fairy tale worlds where like there's some dark stuff going on here, and the end in some cases is a little bit bittersweet. But all in all, a really enjoyable experience with just a couple of small downturns. So,
what do you give it?
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I think it's totally worth playing. It's totally worth buying. I think that something like Brothers is maybe a little bit stronger, but it's still a really fantastic game. I mean, like, I couldn't tell anybody not to play it. So
now.
Oh, shit, I was
haiku.
going to give you a haiku.
575.
All right. Okay, I got to count it out here. I might have to cut this down. You vamp, great, Jason.
Okay, he's using his fingers. I think he's got through the first part. He's trying to get through the second line, the 7. This better be good.
Voice.
Starting over again. Yeah. I don't know. I wish instead of rhyming, it had been like Public Enemy lyrics or something. Okay.
All right.
Got it.
I think. Okay. Let me see if I got this right.
Jeff with a haiku about Child of Light.
Child of Light is great. It could have used more voice work. I give it a 4.
I think we should start doing all reviews like that.
Just haiku the entire time.
That's it.
All right.